Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the third installment of LHH's Women in Leadership Conversation Series for 2023. As a quick reminder, all lines are muted, and you can place any questions you have in the Q&A function. Now I'm going to hand it over to the host for today's conversation, Margot Hoyt, who is the head of North American Leadership Development Business. Margot, over to you.
Thanks so much, Kate. And good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you're coming in from. We're so pleased to have you with us today. As Kate said, this is the third in the 2023 version of our conversation series. And we're just delighted that Meredith Ryan-Reid is joining us today. Before I introduce her, I'd like to share a little bit about LHH. For those of you who are new to LHH, you might know us from our recruitment solutions business, where we help bring professional resources into organizations. You might also know us from our career transition and mobility business, where we support your brand and your employees to leave and find other opportunities, if that's the case, or perhaps within your organization. And finally, as Kate said, I lead our North American Leadership Development business, and that's where we take great pride in working with leaders and helping them to build the capabilities and capacities to execute on organizational strategies. And that's the work that we love to do. This conversation series is more of a passion project, though. I'm a big fan of being able to provide opportunities for women to learn from each other and to support advancement in organizations. And through this conversation now over 3 years, we've been able to introduce some amazing women, their stories and their insights, and today will be no different. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Meredith. Meredith Ryan-Reid is the CEO at Versant Health, one of the nation's leading administration of managed vision care and a wholly owned subsidiary of MetLife, Inc. Prior to joining Versant Health, Meredith served as a senior vice president and head of MetLife's financial wellness and engagement organization, and she led MetLife's global innovation team. There are many accolades to Meredith's professional and personal career. She also has a long history of accomplishment, including Division I college sports and her MBA from Cornell. So we'll hear, I think, some stories from all along her journey. And without further ado, Meredith, welcome. Looking forward to having this conversation with you.
Thank you, Margot. I'm really happy to be here. And I thought you guys have been doing this for years, so I'm really excited that this is only the third time. And I look forward to attending new events moving forward. So thank you for having me.
That's terrific. Thank you. So about over the next hour, Meredith and I are going to first start out just with a conversation. You'll be listening in to Meredith and me having a little chat, but we'll open it up about halfway through or shortly into the second part of this for your questions. And so please get comfortable, find your Q&A function so that as you're listening, you can type in your questions. We'll get to as many as we possibly can before the top of the hour. All right, so shall we get started?
Yes.
Excellent. I like to start out with just something that's really kind of an open question, Meredith. When you think about, your career, maybe you could share with us some of the key milestones along the way, events or people that have really made a big difference over the course.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think when I look back on it, I remember certain things more than others. They really stuck with me for whatever reason. I think when I, first started out, I remember the on-campus executive who came to the University of Richmond and was so passionate about his business and the company he worked for that he really closed the sale in terms of, when and where I thought I would go after college. I was an English major, a journalism and leadership minor. So obviously my next steps were clear. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to get into business. I remember thinking, boy, I wish I would have known about that business major a little earlier. But when I initially applied to colleges, I was thinking I wanted to go pre-med and I wanted to be a doctor. But I changed my mind once I realized how hard it was going to be to play a Division I sport and what that commitment looked like. And, I always loved writing, communicating. I got involved with the Speech Center when I was on campus, which was a very cool sort of side gig I had at the time. I was part of the first group of people that created the speech center, and we got to work with a lot of athletes, a lot of the business school students. And honestly, that was one of the things that I took with me that I always share with people, which is the importance of public speaking and communication skills in general, whether it's in business, in life, leadership. There is nothing more important than communicating. So I don't think I realized it at the time. I knew it was important, but I didn't realize how much of that I would take forward. And frankly, I kind of forgot about that until I started doing a lot of presenting and public speaking at work. And, this was 20 years later, and people would say to me, how'd you learn how to do that? And I was like, well, I just kind of, I've watched other people, I've thought about it. And then I realized, no, actually, I was actually trained. I read a lot about this. I was trained to help other people do this. And some of those things never change. The technology, the tools you have are different, but being a good listener, being a good communicator are critical. And I think they get fully underplayed. People sometimes focus on, oh, this person's really good at math. The math we do in our business is not more than algebra. It's really not. Right. I'm not an actuary. There are other people who are, and theirs is much more sophisticated. But I mean, of course, you have to understand modeling. You have to ask the right questions. You have to understand statistics. But for the most part, it's multiplying and dividing, and it's understanding a spreadsheet, and it's, looking at all those important inputs and finding the right, metrics that matter. But if you can't communicate, you really can't advance your cause, whatever that is. And it's hard to get people to trust you as well, because if you're not a great communicator, people are always wondering, what's he really thinking? I don't think he likes me, or he really meant that, or what, so if you take a lot of the, complexity out of it, and you do connect with people, you can just go a lot faster. So for me, I think about like that early experience at University of Richmond, which is where I went to school as an undergrad. The athletic experience was really something that taught me so much about failure, resilience, perseverance, the importance of a team. I really learned that I'm a team person. I always have to have at least a partner. A team's better. At least a partner is really, really important for me. And then, meeting that first executive who had a lot of passion about his business and was a great communicator, connected with me and really got me started on the path I was on. I could have ended up in medical device sales or banking or any other of the, industries for the companies I was talking to. But I ended up in insurance because of a great communicator.
It's really interesting. And I think there will be lots of people who are listening today who are earlier in their careers. And that whole concept of, wasn't really sure what you were going to do, but you had some kernels, and then a passionate leader who could pull you in a direction. I think there was a little bit of a pull there, right? Pull you in a direction and really entice you to apply your talents and your interests in the insurance area. Yeah. Which is, it's encouraging for those who are still kind of struggling, whether they're early career, mid-career, or later in their careers, that you can take those skills and those interests and find the right people to work with, right?
Yeah. And I think for me too, it was so important that I had that corporate America 101 sort of experience. So I was also looking for a company that was going to train me, because I was very aware of all the things I knew nothing about. And I wanted to be, working for a company that was really investing in talent and bringing people in, was really investing in the training, and a place where I'd be able to build a lot of relationships, learn from smart people, and do something that was important. So to me, the insurance business was always important. You were helping protect people and their families when they needed it most. And that didn't feel frivolous to me. It felt like something that was good for society, was secure, and a place where you do take calculated risk and there is innovation and the business is always evolving, but it's really fundamental to our economy. If businesses can't get insurance, if people can't get insurance, if people don't have access to healthcare, they don't have life insurance, there's many things that we wouldn't be able to do. So to me, that was always really interesting. And I also got exposure to so many different companies and industries, because when I started, I was an underwriter, which meant that I was evaluating companies and their employee population and figuring out, how to price their insurance. So I learned a lot about those companies and what they did. And to me, it was a really great education.
When do you think you started to realize that that you wanted to be a leader, that you wanted not just to be in a great industry, but you wanted to be leading a team in that industry?
Probably in kindergarten. I always knew.
That's honest.
I wanted to be. I don't know if I wanted to be the leader. I just found myself being the leader. And I think that I learned when I was in college, certainly on my lacrosse and field hockey teams, I would find myself in that situation. I was the oldest child in my various, groups of friends, kind of find myself in that spot. But when I started working, I think I just wanted to move things forward. It wasn't about me being in charge or me wanting to be in charge. It was more, I think we need to go over there because, that's how you score a goal, or that's how you get that thing done. Or guys, what do you think about this? Or what if we did that? And it's more about fixing the problem or winning the game or scoring the goal or, whatever it is, it's about the right answer and doing it together and bringing people along and sort of, when I don't have the right answer, I'm asking a ton of questions. And if someone else has the right answer, I want to support them and follow that, follow that idea. So for me, it's always been about whatever the mission is, let's figure out how to get it done together. I don't like to go it alone. I don't like to, quietly work on things myself. I like to sound it out with other people. I like to, work together to accomplish whatever it is. So I think that was what attracted me more to leadership, or maybe landed me in the leadership spot, as opposed to I would like to be in charge. It's been more about like, whatever the situation is, we need to get it done. How do we get it done together?
How can we get through that? Yeah, I'm curious about, lots of women talk about they are interested in it, but they didn't always get supportive feedback, or they didn't get great coaching, or they struggled moving into those roles. What was your experience like moving through the ranks and refining your leadership skills, if you will, as you went along?
I feel like I oftentimes got a lot of feedback, and sometimes it felt like too much feedback. Sometimes things are just, I feel like some things are better left unsaid, although all of it is something you can learn from. I had a manager once who would say feedback is a gift. And I've said that to other people too, because there really is, and all joking aside, there's nothing worse than being ignored or feeling invisible. So I've always said, if someone takes the time to tell you something that you need to work on, or maybe you could do differently, or this, if you did this little change, you might have been more successful here. You have to take that as an expression of caring. That's someone who wants you to be better, because if they don't care and they just sort of dismiss you, or they don't take the time to tell you, they don't really care about you getting better. And I do think there's a balance there, because as humans, you want to, or you need to hear, 10 positive things and one constructive thing. It's how our brains work. You have to balance that. So I really work hard to tell people, great job on that. When you redirected that meeting, that was critical, or I love how you did that. I make sure to say those things all the time when I see them. And then call out, areas we could improve as well. But if you don't get that imbalance right, you have to have more positive than negative, people just don't process it. And they just feel kind of bad about themselves and a little self-conscious. And then they aren't able to get better. So you really have to work on building people's confidence and showing them, the few areas where they need to improve. I find.
As you've maneuvered your career from different positions and organizations, those transitions are really important. Are there any types of support that you got or advice that you got that helped to make those transitions easier for you? Made the decisions easier to jump from one position to another, for instance?
I'll give you the best one I have. Is pretty dramatic. So I lived through the financial crisis, as I'm sure many did on the phone. I was working for AIG at the time. I had just finished my MBA at Cornell, was ready to take on the world, so great. All that hard work was over, getting my MBA while I was working a full-time job. Oh, wow. And then the whole world fell apart. And it was surreal and terrifying and just changed my worldview. I was working for a company that was a, top 10 company, AAA rated global business. I loved it. I loved, all the different things I got to work on there. And it was a really great experience. And then everything was upside down and I didn't have any control. And I started talking to, a lot of people I knew outside of the company because I just wasn't sure where it was all headed. Right. And there was one woman who I really looked up to. She was a mentor. I had met her through Cornell. She was, a rock star in the investment banking world. And she was just a really cool lady. And I was thinking about having a baby right before all this. So then I had a huge pause and realized, oh my God, what if I have to look for a job? I can't be pregnant. That's what I thought. Right. More on that later. And I had lunch with her and I wasn't even going to bring it up because I was sticking to, about the business and where I should be talking to, who I should be talking to. And I'm really worried. And she gave me two amazing pieces of advice around transition. One was, why would you look in another industry? You already have so much political capital and experience, and you have a great network in the insurance industry. You don't need to switch industries. This is affecting everybody. You need to work through this and take advantage of your strength. So I thought that was awesome advice. Right. And I did what she said. And number two was when I told her about, I think I need to hold on having a baby. She actually got kind of emotional, and she was someone who really struggled to get pregnant. She had two children. They're, in their early 30s now, both very successful. She said to me, you need to move forward. Being a mother will make you a better manager. It will, obviously all the things that it does to you from a life perspective. And I just remember it'll make me a better manager. That was nobody had said that before. Right. That's amazing. Because I had struggled for a long time about, what is the right time to have a baby. It didn't neatly fit anywhere. And I know, the biological right time is probably when you're 20, but we were well past that stage in terms of, what fit into my life and what my husband and I were ready for. And I took her advice and I was so happy, obviously, that I did. My greatest achievements in life are my two daughters who are now 9 and 12. And she was totally right about making me a better manager, a better leader. I have something I can use in my own experience to relate to just about anyone, because so many people are parents. We know everybody's a child, but all of us are dealing with families and priorities and balancing all these different things that we care about. And it just gave me great insight, and also allowed me to focus on what was important, but to also have, that shared experience with so many people that I might not have had a ton of commonality with aside from that.
Yeah, it's interesting perspective, because you're right. There is no such thing as the one strategy that works for women in terms of starting a family, right? What worked for you may not work for somebody else, but clearly this person saw that it was important to you. And you can't put your life on hold for those things.
No.
And it was something that you really wanted to pursue. So that made it a good time, especially when there's so much else that was outside of your control, right?
Yeah. And I feel like at the time, when I was younger, everything felt so high stakes.
Right.
Everything felt like, if I miss this by 6 months, I won't get this, I won't be able to do that. You look back on it and it's just not true. And I think that's why you always want to meet with people who have lived a little longer than you have, who have gone through different things, different phases, and can look back on it with perspective and tell you what they think or what their experience has been. And, I just wish there were moments in my life when I could have, obviously understood the future and just relaxed a little bit. Just a little.
We need to be intense. We need to be focused, but take it into perspective. I hear that. Absolutely. What's interesting is that there are a lot of people who are listening who are women trying to advance their careers. There are a lot of women who are in leadership positions like you, working to help advance other women with their careers. So you started to touch on some advice for women, if you could, if you will. Think about what you're seeing happening around you, right? So what kinds of initiatives are making a difference when you're mentoring young women, or when you're talking to others? What's making a difference to them in terms of advancing their careers, making them feel like they want to advance their careers?
Yeah. I think, what I've learned, if I could put some themes around it, I think just naturally we all as humans fear the unknown, and we are worried about risk, and we can catastrophize, and we stop ourselves from doing something because we're worried about what might happen if we do that. And I've always been worried about what won't happen if I don't do it. And I think that's a big shift that has allowed me to sort of go through things that are scary or feel a little risky or aren't very comfortable. Now, again, I'm not like scaling a mountain. I'm not, doing anything that dangerous. I am just trying to navigate corporate America. Okay. So I also do try to put it in perspective. I am not in a war zone. Things are pretty good, and we don't need to make them this scary. So that's sort of like step one. Step two is I try to encourage people to know that they are stronger than they think they are. They are more capable than they give themselves credit for. And they need to believe in that and know that if they stumble, if they fall down, get back up, try again, learn from it. Always make it a learning experience. I love the fact that, I have 2 children. I went through that experience. I felt all of those emotions. I felt vulnerable. I was scared. I was, struggling. I was sleep deprived. I did all those things. But then when I have conversations with other women, there's been a couple times where women were pregnant, and I offered them a promotion. Like, God, I just don't know if it's the right time. I'm going to be going on leave. I don't want to let anyone down. And I said, stop it. We'll be okay for 3 or 4 months or however long you need, whatever it is. When you come back, it'll all still be here. Nothing's, we can handle it. And I've had that conversation with a couple of people, and I had to sort of badger them into it a little bit, like, just trust me, take the promotion, sort of thing. And it worked out. And of course we can all handle, we're a team. We can handle this. And, people need that encouragement. They need someone to sort of talk them into it, to bolster their strength, and to let them know it's all going to be okay. It's all going to be fine. I think we make things so consequential when they're not, and we can work through it. If someone had to get their knee operated on, or, whatever, the organization would deal with it. Same thing. If you want to have a child, you want to figure that out, you want to enhance your life, the work will get figured out, and everyone always figures it out. And I feel like when you make that investment with people, they learn something about themselves. I've always had it work out, and they are loyal to me forever, because they're like, you told me I could do this and I didn't believe you, and I did it. And you might never, that person might never work for you again, or might be another part of the organization, but they always remember that. And I hope they pass it along, because I feel like we really need to encourage each other and believe in each other.
What's the scariest thing you've ever done, Meredith?
Oh, well, I did some water park slides with my daughters last summer that I still regret. I'm not, as much as I take, calculated risk in business, I am not personally a physical risk taker. So I'll never jump out of an airplane. It's not a goal. It's not like, oh, I wish I could. It's like, no, I do not want to. And I know that, and that's fine. I don't like roller coasters. I don't like to be in a car that's going too fast. I'm personally risk averse with my body. So that's a thing. That's really scary. I've done very high stakes sort of public speaking things. Again, not nearly as scary as a roller coaster. And I know there are some people in the crowd who are like, I would go on a roller coaster 50 times a day before I would walk on a stage and give a speech. So we all have different things.
Yeah.
But I think that the times when you want to do something, right? Something you really want to do, but you're scared, but you still move through it, are the times you learn a lot about yourself. I don't love to fly. I fly all the time. I had to figure that out in college. Something I wasn't that comfortable with, but basically realized, well, I want to go places. Right. So I better figure this out. And so I, talk myself into it. I do it all the time, multiple times a week sometimes. And it was in an Alanis Morissette song, but someone also said, potentially Winston Churchill said it too. So you guys can fact check this one. But I've always loved the expression, the only way out is through. So sometimes when you're in that really difficult spot and you're trying to figure out, how am I going to get through this? Sometimes the only way is to go through it, right? And that's one step at a time. That's maybe sometimes it's plowing through it. But, I love, when I think back, one of the things I like to do is read some of my old notebooks and look at something from 3 or 4 years ago that seemed like the biggest problem ever back then, but realizing how we worked through it, how we fixed it, and how it wasn't really a big deal, is therapeutic to me, because I can apply that to whatever I'm facing now. It's like, okay, this is not something that should upset my stomach, even though sometimes it still does, but this is something that we just need to attack and break it into parts and write it down, figure out our plan, put pen to paper, talk to the right people. We're going to figure this out. And that's something I always sort of take with me.
Yeah, I've had moments of those intense, oh my gosh, periods as well. And I worked with a woman who said, we're always going to get through it. We always have, we always will. Might not be exactly the way we had hoped or planned, but we're going to get through it. And then we'll go from there. We'll take the next step from there. That's terrific. I'm curious about, when you are coaching young women, when you're coaching peers who are women, and just having good conversations, have those conversations changed, or the topics changed a lot over the last few years? This pandemic thing that's really seemed to have turned our life upside down in some ways. How are the themes or topics of those conversations changing?
I think we have to be our own advocates and be in touch with what we want and what we can contribute. And I think people in general just have to get a little bit more direct so that they can get what they want. So whether that's, you're in a situation where someone is treating you the way, or not the way you want to be treated, or they've said a few things that have rubbed you the wrong way or made you uncomfortable, the sooner you can articulate that back to that person in the moment or afterwards and have the strength to do that, whether they're a peer, a superior, a subordinate, whatever the words are, you have to be able to set those guidelines. You have to teach people how you expect to be treated. I think that's really important. I think a lot of people either suffer in silence or they'll complain to someone after the fact, and then things get really messy and don't always work out the way you want them to. If you can be more specific in those moments in a negative situation, I think there's a better outcome. And then second, talking about what you want to do, what experiences you want to have, what developmental opportunities you need, what jobs you'd like to try. The more you can get specific about that and plant those seeds with the right people, they grow. And 6 months from now, someone might say, oh, I remember I talked to Margot and she really wanted to do this. And I never thought about her doing that. But now that she said it and she's interested in it, we should think about her. There's so many times that recency effect comes into play, or someone's just said the right thing, and it opens people's minds and it puts you, on their radar. I think people just again, it goes back to communication, right? So important.
In your career, what's helped you to get that kind of clarity? Because I have conversations with a lot of women who are like, I'm not sure I dare to dream about that, or I haven't really thought about it, right? I've been doing a great job. I get great feedback. How do you get that kind of clarity? What's your experience been with that?
I think that naturally people want to help you, but you have to help them. You can't wait for other people to come up with an idea for you. And I think probably the first 10 years of my career, I was like, where is that person that's going to take me under their wing? And I'm just going to follow them. And that's going to be my path. Like, what is my path? What does it look like? Could somebody show me? And nobody ever does, because they're not thinking about you.
Right.
That's the other thing. People are generally self-interested. It's not a bad thing. And they're trying to get things done. They're trying to solve the problems that are on their desk. And if they see you as someone who can help them solve a problem, they will make all the time in the world for you. And it's not just, yes, of course, some people like you and they do want to help you and they are being, there is some altruism there. But for the most part, if you can articulate to someone how you can help them solve something that's real, that's in front of them, that's really meaningful. Yeah. So I think for me, I was again thinking about, what is that path? What do I need to do? I wish someone would tell me, can I read is there a manual I can read? Like, what is there's some things, certain training programs, there's a path, there's a obvious set of next steps. There's, you do this job for 5 years, you're well positioned to move into this management role. So there's always that, those things definitely existed. But I found there were some people I've known for over 20 years who initially, we'd have lunch and, I was sort of always waiting for them to maybe like give me a call and say, I got this great opportunity. And that never happened. But when I went to them with a very specific ask, of course they wanted to help right away.
Right.
And I do that for people too. If anyone gives me a specific ask, I make sure to, deliver on it, because I like to do that. I do like to help people. It makes me feel good. I feel accomplished. That's fun. But if, you sit down with me and you're like, and I ask you what you want to do next, or what are your aspirations? And it's, I want to be an AVP. Like, what does that mean?
Right.
What do you actually want to do? What problem do you want to solve? What do you want to develop? What thing do you want to learn? What do you want to experience? That's a much more action-oriented conversation. And you have to be in charge if you're the person asking for the help.
Yeah. It's amazing. I think that you're so right. People love to help, whether that's, even answering the phone call to set up a coaching meeting, a mentoring meeting, a networking meeting. People love to do that. And I think that's brilliant. Just, the more specific you can be about the ask, the easier. You're making it easy for somebody, right? They may not be able to help you, but sure enough, if they can, to your point, they're going to want to do the best that they can. That's great. We have time for just a couple more questions. I think that one of the questions we receive a lot is about men and how men can help to champion and help to support women to advance in their careers. Any particular stories or advice for the men out there who are listening?
I have had more male mentors and sponsors than women. And I want that to change over time, of course, but don't think that you need a woman to mentor you or sponsor you. Be an equal opportunity seeker. And I think it's about, same sort of thing. If you ask for the help, you will get it, and you will find wonderful people who want to help you and can really add a lot to your career and your development. Probably started for me. I had a really strong father, a really good relationship with him. His particular personality has allowed me, I think, to do really well with a certain type of personality in corporate America. My dad was a competitive athlete. He had a nice career in sales. He's definitely, I call him an alpha male, definitely type A. And for me, I always knew how to deal with him. And I think that really helped. I understood his profile, his personality. I had a lot of, still do, a lot of male friends. I think the sports thing for me was very easy, sort of relate and to, know what people were talking about when we were at a happy hour or wherever. So some common interests, but also just confidence and a comfort level, and not being afraid to ask for help. And mostly worked for men. I'm trying to remember if I've ever had, I've only had one or two female bosses in my career, which is a shame. I've definitely networked with many senior women and consider them to be phenomenal role models and friends. But for whatever reason, that was sort of my experience. So I work really hard to make sure that I'm mentoring other women. I'm sharing, my experiences, my story. I've always had more women on my teams and my direct reports than men, or at least 50-50. And that's not, I'm not trying to make a point. I'm just trying to get the best people. And I think that, having a diverse team is extremely important to get the best ideas. And I think, people need those experiences. They need someone pulling them up, pulling them along, talking them into taking something that might feel a little risky, but I think we have to do it. We're 51% of the population in the US. Maybe we're a little more. We should be represented as such in leadership. That's how I think.
I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to go to the Q&A section here. So this is the opportunity for those of you who haven't put a question in yet. When you talk about the importance of, you said you hadn't worked with a lot of women, but you had relationships with some women. How did you find those role models? I think that you got to see it to believe it is a common expression, right? Where do you look for those? Especially if, early on, perhaps more so than now, the insurance industry was fairly male dominated. How do you find those? What did you do to find role models?
If they existed, I found them. It was just the supply was not there in my own personal world. The companies I was working at, there were few and far between. But when I did find those women, I did a little bit of stalking. I definitely reached out to them and, invited them for coffee or lunch or whatever. I always tried to make it, have some food involved. Everyone likes lunch, right?
Right.
Or coffee. And I really tried to be specific and targeted with, the questions that I had. And, I obviously worked with a lot of women. I, had female peers and all of that sort of thing. And customers, some of the brokers we work with in our business. Anytime I found a woman who was senior in a leadership position, I did whatever I could. And by the way, I was not always successful. There were some people who really did not have any interest in a relationship, but other people did. And the ones who said yes, I worked hard to maintain that. But I always believe it has to be a two-way street. So I tried to, what could I help them with? I'd come prepared. I'd ask them for advice. And, I was really grateful when I did find those relationships.
That takes, certainly you got to have some confidence and a little bit of fearlessness, I think, that's in there in terms of your own personality, but you've got to find that, right? In order to seek out new relationships, to seek out new networks and role models. You got to, what's the worst thing that can happen? Play that game, right? What's the worst thing that can happen if you ask someone to lunch or to have a conversation with you?
Completely. That was the sales training in me, was not having a fear of rejection, because I get rejected all the time. There's a lot of people who say no. And you have to be able to move on. And that's also, I think, a really important lesson. That goes back to, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Okay, if you never ask anybody out, you'll never have your feelings hurt, but you'll also never meet anybody,
Right.
So you just have to balance that and know that that's a part of the territory, and that's okay. You just move on. Their loss.
Kind of goes back to the advice you said earlier. What happens, not what if I do, but what if I don't? What if I don't reach out? What if I don't get the advantage of having this conversation? Yeah. Excellent.
Exactly.
Okay, so here's an interesting one. Melissa asked, do you have any advice specifically for women who are trying to move forward in leadership roles, but they don't have a college degree?
I don't. I have certainly seen several men in my career who didn't have college degrees, who got to the very top of the corporate structure. I think it depends on the company you're in and what the, sort of, I'll call them the comparables are. If everyone has a Harvard MBA on the leadership team, it might not be the place. But I think that it's becoming more, I don't say more accepted or less unusual for everyone to have a specific type of degree. Obviously, really depends on the industry, but how many billionaires in this country, or how many successful entrepreneurs didn't finish college? I think that starts to even the playing field a little bit. So I don't know. I don't have specific advice there, except that I'd let your track record do the talking. You didn't get a college degree 25 years ago, but you've been wildly successful in your industry. That wouldn't stop me from hiring you. So I wouldn't let it become a thing.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to get the kind of experience that you need, right? And other ways of getting development too, whether it's on the job or courses and certifications and that sort of thing along the way. What's important. Here's a great one. What are some of your recommendations for networking groups to become a part of? Which ones have been more helpful than others in your career growth?
I think, what I would say, I don't have a specific recommendation on a networking group, but what I found to be important is you certainly have to network within your own company, but make sure you are going beyond that. So make sure you're building a network with either customers or maybe intermediaries that are connected to your business, or through your school or other groups that are adjacent. I think the biggest lesson for a lot of people during the financial crisis was the importance of external networks. So if the only people are at your company, and your company crashes or is in some other situation that's unfortunate, whatever it is, you're vulnerable. Plus I always viewed networking. I'm very curious and I'm interested in people, and I learn best through meeting people, talking to people, understanding them, who they are, as opposed to, just reading. Although I do a ton of reading too, but meeting with people, getting their responses to things, their perspective was always beneficial to me. Plus I'm an extrovert and I get energy from other people. So, if I sat and ate lunch at my desk every day, I'd be really sleepy after lunch. Right. But if I'm in a cool restaurant in Manhattan with an interesting person, I'm skipping back to the office. So it was always just a good wellness strategy for me.
Yeah.
And it's into career strategy.
Terrific. I'm going to take you in a bit of a different direction. Stephanie's asking about, seeking to jump into a health tech job mid-career in the marketing area, and currently getting resistance that I didn't rise up in the healthcare system as a fundamental requirement in most job opportunities. However, I believe that diversity of thought and proven experience in CPG is exactly what healthcare needs to transform and change. Can you provide, she's asked for 3, we'll take as many as you want, for someone mid-career, VP, executive level, to try and break into the health tech space? There's a specific ask right there.
Yeah, I think you need to find the right company that believes in your similar philosophy, right? So I think, one thing I think, healthcare has changed so much, continues to change, that it's, I think it's less relevant if you've been doing it for 25 years. That's just my own opinion, because there's so much change. And also in certain, functional areas, your expertise is really valuable. I know we've taken risks in hiring people from outside industry for certain functions, and it's been really additive. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's actually, if someone's not a quick learner, if they don't make the transition, it's not going to work. But if you are a quick study, you are interested in the business, I think you're probably going to have to prove that part. So I would do a ton of research on whatever, particular part of the healthcare sector you're trying to break into, and be really clear about what you can add. Because I think you are on to something, right? If healthcare is really meant to be a consumer-driven business, then consumer experience is really important. I think it's important across the board. We talk about that a lot. We talk about becoming a product company. Customer first is a really big deal. So if you understand, I think in general, maybe you lean into, behavioral science or behavioral economics or consumer behavior. That's relevant everywhere. And I think it's going to become a bigger theme for a lot of companies. And obviously understanding the whole digital ecosystem is incredibly important. So I'd keep pressing, but you got to find the right company and the right culture that's going to support you.
That's the hard research that needs to get done, right? There's a question here, and I'm not sure if what the context is a little bit, but I'm going to try it anyways. It says, why having a partner is important to you and in your career growth. Now, you talked about having a partner or a team at work, and they might also see the partner over your right shoulder in that lovely picture behind you. So you choose, what kind of partner is important to you in your career growth?
Somebody who understands me, somebody who believes in me and wants the best for me. Definitely someone who makes me laugh, that we can laugh about things together and vent. It's very important to have a venting partner, a safe space to complain about whatever is driving you crazy. You can't vent to a lot of people. You got to pick like 1 or 2 really safe venting outlets. I always found that to be very critical for me. I could keep it all together and do everything I had to do and work with a lot of different types of people, but every once in a while you need to have a friend who you can go have a cup of coffee with and be like, So that's important. And in life, very similar job description. I am very lucky to have an amazing husband who I've been with for a very long time. And we're doing this life thing together. And so it's critical to my success as a person and a professional to have the right partner. That's what I always tell people who are thinking about or asking me advice. You've got to pick the right partner. And that's how you can kind of work through all the different challenges and, be there for each other and figure out how you're going to make all this work. But I think it's just important, at work, if you're planning a party, if you're playing, a sport. I play a lot of tennis and paddle tennis and golf, and I try to do those things socially, and having a great partner, a doubles partner, or a friend who you're going to plan an event with, it's so important, and it's rewarding and fun. And I think at work I've always been a part of great teams. I've been able to pick and recruit great teams, but many times I have those one or two key people who we're talking 3 times a day. And that to me helps me think and helps me look around corners and get perspective I wouldn't have had on my own. A constant sounding board, and it can't be someone who always agrees with you, because that's less useful.
Very much less useful. I get that. And you mentioned paddleboard as one of the things that you were looking for a partner for. There's a question here from Kristen who says, thank you so much for your generosity in joining today. You and she met through paddle tennis, which is a partner sport. And she's been really impressed with how you focus on a demanding role and career, are the mother of 2 daughters, and find time to play paddle tennis. How does taking care of yourself factor into your life and career?
It's so important. And it was something I found during COVID. I was not really doing it before that. And so it was one of the few sports or activities we could actually do, because it's outside. You're playing in the winter. It can be really cold, but you're socially distant. And I just fell in love with it then, because I live in New England, and to be able to do something outside in the winter is really unusual, unless it's skiing. And I never skied. Again, go back to my prior commentary on risks with my own body. That being said, I know I played lacrosse in college.
I was going to say lacrosse is pretty dangerous.
But my feet were always close to the ground. Maybe that's the distinction for me. I'm not sure. Somehow I got comfortable with that, and I don't mind, a little bit of a crazy sport. And I loved that. And I realized it was physical, fitness, and it was so much better. Again, going back to, I don't want to run on a treadmill. I don't want to run by myself. I'm much happier chasing a ball with a partner, beating another team or getting beaten by another team, than I am just going to do something on my own. So I know that about myself, and it's social, it's fun. I didn't realize how important it would be for my mental health and my emotional health, because you can only concentrate on that ball when you're out there. Otherwise you might get hit in the head. So it really helps to push whatever is stressing you out of your brain for a solid 90 minutes. And I love it. And I've made some great friends, including Kristen, in that whole experience. So it's been a lot of fun.
That's amazing. There's a couple of questions here, and I'm not to get to everybody's, but there's a couple of questions in here about, what are the top 3 values to have in leadership as a woman? Or, there's a couple of questions also around you're a mother of daughters. So I'm going to combine them together and say, it's going to be a while maybe still before you're giving career advice to your young daughters, but what do you think that the key advice to give to young women today is about building their leadership careers?
I think I oftentimes I don't make a distinction between men and women when I think about this, but I understand, we have a unique set of experiences or things to sort of deal with. But for me, it's first and foremost, be yourself. They've done it, which I was happy to hear all the studies that actually done about the importance of authenticity. I was like, oh, I'm glad that's important because I don't know how not to be authentic. And I think, I think a lot of people have grown up thinking I have to be this way. I have to be this certain type. I have to be more like him. I have to be more like her. And I reject that. I reject it. And I always have. I think you can't be too far off the reservation that people are like, I can't relate to this person. But if you are your authentic self and you are a good communicator and you're real with people and you make it about the mission, the purpose of the company, you're solving problems, you are a person who delivers. I think those are the two most important things. One is authenticity. Second is produce.
Yeah.
Whatever you're in, be the person that everyone can rely on because you're going to get it done or you're going to rally a group of people to get it done. Those two things are really important. And then I think, third is, you have to be brave. You have to be resilient. You have to admit when things don't work out the way you thought they would and figure out the path forward. I think if you can do those things, if you can adapt, they do a lot of work. They've done a lot of work about, one of the most important factors in career success is change agility.
Mm.
The same thing as adapting. I think those three things to me are really important. I think you always have to be a student, show people you're curious. And then you got to show people you care about them. Look people in the eye, have a good handshake, stand up straight, all those things that, we probably were all taught at some point, I think matters. Sometimes people are judging you in the first 3 seconds they meet you. I also taught my daughters to play golf. When they were about 4 or 5 years old, I was shocked that they actually have stuck with it. They love it. They're both really accomplished golfers. They're a lot better than I am. It's embarrassing to play with them sometimes, but I learned when I graduated college, I had opportunities to play my whole life. I never did because I always wanted to play other sports. And I asked my dad to teach me because I didn't want to be left out in the insurance business because golf is a thing. It's just one analogy, but it's just something else that will give you confidence so you fit in a place where you haven't always been welcome or it's assumed that you belong there. And if you can get past that, especially a sport like golf where you can be a hero 1 minute, a zero the next, you're able to work through that adversity, I think is an important thing to draw from. And you could pick any sport, you could pick playing the piano, you could pick whatever. But to me, that was just something that has helped me a lot. And I wanted to make sure I gave that to them as well.
Sage advice, Meredith. Thank you so much. If I could be there, I would give you a very firm handshake and look you directly in the eye to say thank you. Thank you.
I think we might hug, Margot.
Okay, I will give you a hug now. Right. Okay. I'm good with that. I'm good with that too. But thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conversation. There are so many notes that I'm taking. I know that many others are as well. If you walked away from this conversation without some kind of a tidbit, then you really haven't been listening. So thank you again. Really appreciate your time, Meredith, and for giving of your insights and your experiences. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Margot, and thank you to everyone who joined.
And to those of you who joined, I also want to remind you that next week is the fourth and final in the 2023 series of Women in Leadership, a Conversation series. Katina Wilson is joining us. She's with Fiserv as their head of prepaid card ops and strategic partnerships. And that's next Tuesday on April the 18th. In terms of feedback for today, please provide your feedback. There's a link that's going to be sent to you so you can do that. We really do appreciate you joining us and look forward to connecting at the next conversation. Thanks again. Thanks again, Meredith. Bye for now.